Anthony Hartcher, and today's topic is on connection. Yes, I've been doing lots of discussion and research and thinking and talking about connection and really wanting to understand this innate drive within us to connect. And I've come across this in all walks of my life and I'm wanting to share my thoughts on it because this is ultimately where my book is leading me is towards this. We're ultimately seeking connection and feeling at one with everyone and everything. And it's our lifelong journey in order to uh, I guess feel connected. And when we're not feeling connected, that's when we get a sense of we start to question things. We start to question the point of life. We start to question uh, what's my point of being here, and those sort of thoughts go around in our heads. And we're at all times striving for this connection. And there's so many ways in which we can connect. Recently I did a corporate talk, and I was talking on active listening and the power of active listening. And I was delving into the subject as to why we get stuck in not being able to engage in listening. And obviously, there's a big sense of presence needing to happen in order for us to active listen. We need to be really present. We actually need to hear what the other person's saying and hearing not just the words, but in between the words, what is not being said. And often judgment can shroud this, can often lead us to not hear what they're actually saying, and we may get stuck on words, but we're not then picking up what's between the words. And it's what's between the words and the words that make up the wholeness in understanding the other person. And so I was going through this presentation and sharing information, and we're doing exercises. And someone came up to me at the end and started to, you know, say that they enjoyed the information that was shared. It resonated with them. It was timely for them. And so we're connecting through that, right? So we're connecting through, she's connecting with the information that I've shared. And then she starts to share some personal information. And then once she shares the personal information, she then says to me, I think I've overshared. And I thought about that and I'm thinking, no, you haven't overshared, in a sense that I've shared enough information that resonated with you. And so we've hit this level of resonance and we're able to go deeper into the connection between one another. And so when she said she overshared, I said, no, that's fantastic because I can further relate to you and we can further connect at a deeper level. And we did. We continued that discussion around what she had shared with me, but thought she had overshared and was questioning whether she had overshared it. But I think subconsciously she felt the connection, and consciously she was questioning her subconscious behavior in terms of asking me, or not asking me, but telling me some personal information. And this sort of then got all this questioning in my head about this whole sense of connection. And we, in every interaction with every human being, we are looking for connection. We are looking for, and we seek that through being able to relate to one another. And so we'll talk about the weather because it's something we both observe at that point in time, and we can reflect on it. And so people often talk about the weather, or they'll talk about something topical, and they're looking for a point of connection with the other person. And they'll continue to ask questions until they find something that resonates with them and the other person. And then they'll continue on that conversation. And this is why the start of any conversation is a bit awkward, because we're dancing around the surface or the tip of the iceberg in order to find that deeper, more meaningful connection with the other person. As I said, what can really make this even more difficult is when we're not present and we're distracted and we're thinking of other things, or we pass judgment. And the instant, or the when we do pass judgment, we shut down to really finding other avenues for connection, because we have formed a judgment, we've formed an opinion, or we've boxed them, we've boxed the other person. And this can also relate to, when we uh, interact with the environment, or other things that we deal with in life, right? Is that the moment we judge it, we box it, and we don't see the wholeness in what we're experiencing or what we're going through. And so, where I'm going with this conversation is that ultimately, at all times, we're seeking connection in order to feel more connected and more at one with everyone and everything. When we judge, we often judging something of us that we've disconnected from. And this can feel uncomfortable because we're uncomfortable with it. We've judged it. We've said it. We've judged it that it's bad. It's no good, and we shouldn't have done that. And so this is what we. So some people might, the person we're having a conversation with might be sharing something that brings up a reminder of you of some past experience that you've judged, and you're feeling some shame or guilt, and you feel that inside of you, and it makes you feel uneasy. But the person hasn't done anything to you, they're just trying to connect with you. But you've shut down and stuck on this judgment that you've made on yourself at some past time. And so that can really affect your willingness to continue with the conversation, or your willingness to continue to connect, because you've judged it and you've disconnected with that part of you. And so, what ultimately we want to be doing is further conversing and switching, like allowing ourselves to be aware that we're a bit uneasy. We can take note of that, but we don't want to get stuck on that. We want to stay present with the conversation. So let go of that judgment. That uneasy feeling will dissipate, and you'll be able to continue to converse and connect with the other person, as opposed to, oh, I've got to go. Like you're looking for a reason to go because you're feeling uneasy, and you think it's the other person, but it's you, and you're running away from yourself, as opposed to ultimately they've reminded you of something that you've disconnected from, that you're ultimately seeking connection to. So this is a real process, and a process that we can either avoid or we can lean into. And so I encourage the person that I was conversing with after my presentation that to lean into that. Let's continue this conversation. And I think, well, certainly we continued that conversation, and we connected further as a result of leaning into it. And I let her know that it's okay in terms of what she shared with me, because it opened up new avenues to deeper connect. And I could share my insights, my experience, and that may have helped her. And so that was more beneficial for her and more meaningful interaction, because ultimately we're seeking meaningful interactions, but sometimes that meaningful interaction can require you leaning into what's uncomfortable, leaning into that shadow self. And that's what that other person is reminding you of, something that you have disconnected to, that ultimately the universe wants you to be at one with self and at one with everything and everyone. And so this is a constant process that we go through in life, and it's up to us whether we lean into it or we keep running away from it, keep avoiding it. But ultimately, what we're doing is further creating more points of disconnection as opposed to connection. So the connection initially, we have this innate desire to connect. And that's what, you could say life is ultimately a journey of connection and finding oneness with everyone and everything. Uh, and that includes death, right? That includes um, what whatever we transform to after this physical presence in this human or this human experience, right? So we ultimately, and there's a big disconnection with death in society in terms of people just wanting to live longer, but why? um, because we don't know what's afterwards, and I think it's because they know what life is, and they're thinking, well, this life is better than the afterlife, but they don't actually know that. And I think ultimately we want to get a connection with life after life. um, and that's part of the life journey, is to embrace the wholeness of being here and always being here. So whether it be in the human form or non-human form, but it's ultimately this connection with everything and all things, and all things life and all things death and all things. So that's what we're striving for. And whenever we feel a bit uneasy or uncomfortable, we're leaning into areas that we've either judged or areas of uncertainty or unknowing. And we get a bit nervous and fearful, and we can let that fear overcome us, and therefore we turn away and go away or leave. But ultimately, that's a disconnection. So it can be useful in the conversations to say, look, if that feels a bit uneasy, but I'm going to just let it go. It's just like when we do mindfulness, and we did a number of mindfulness activities that day, was the whole thing of presence is accepting that there's going to be distractions, but letting that distraction go. And that's the art of this transformation of seeking more presence. But yes, there's going to always be some form of distraction that takes us away from being present. But the process of mindfulness is going back to what we're focused on. And in this case, connection. We're focused on connection. So, yes, there's going to be distractions. There's going to be things of judgment or things of feeling uneasy, uncomfortable that will happen during the interaction that we just need to allow to be, and not to focus on that. Because if we focus on that uncomfortable feeling, it expands, it enlarges, it gets bigger, and it gets so big that we just can't deal with it anymore and we just want to walk away. But if the more we get curious and thinking, okay, yes, I'm feeling a bit uneasy, but I'm just going to just allow that to pass and continue with the conversation, continue to seek this connection, continue to deepen this connection, and allow whatever happens to happen. And that's leaning into the uncertainty, the unknown. So there's, and this builds trust, doesn't it, over time, because we lean into that uncertainty, that unknown, that becomes a bit more certain and known, and we get more comfortable with it, and we get more comfortable with that person, and more comfortable, and we form a deeper bond, a deeper sense of connection. And this will ultimately start to, you feel more at one with self in this process. It's so ways in which we can do this is just really, I think, with every interaction, and it's interaction with things that you're uncomfortable with too, and situations you're uncomfortable with, and leaning in to further explore and understand that. Allow the curiosity to continue to flow, as opposed to the judgment taking over, because the judgment will then take you away from it, and they'll create a disconnect. So we just want to, keep that curious and that presence about us, so that we can experience the wholeness of what we're uncomfortable with. Because we'll start to unravel more about ourselves and more about why we feel this way. And we'll have a deeper understanding of self in this process. Not only a deeper understanding of the other person, but we'll get to know ourselves better through this striving for this ultimate aim of being at one with everyone and everything. But we can only do that if we lean in and look and discover and reveal a greater connection with the other person, with self and everything. So look for connection points, but you'll gravitate towards those that feel comfortable, but it's also leaning into those that feel a bit uncomfortable and understanding why they're uncomfortable and what it is that you're judging and getting a better understanding of that. And then you'll start to unravel the wholeness of it. And you're thinking, it's not really uncomfortable. It's just a past experience that I judged that I'm leaning into now. And it doesn't feel that uncomfortable because I'm stepping further into it and getting to understand it better, getting to see the fullness of it, as opposed to just shut down in relation to one perspective of it. As you know, we ultimately see the world from our perspective that's been shaped from the past. But what we're trying to do in this process of connection is broaden our lens, broaden our filter, so we see more wholeness as opposed to only half of things or a quarter of things or 10% of things. We start to see the bigger picture, and we can only start to see that once we lean in and get curious and stay present and get a better understanding for it. We start to see a bigger picture. And then we start to see the world more as it is, as opposed to just your filter, your reality. And that can be quite narrow for some people. If you broaden that filter so it's less filter and you see the world more as it is and see people for who they are, then you have this greater connection with things as they are and people for who they are. And that's ultimately where we're leaning into a space of love and gratitude. Because when we can see things for as they are and appreciate them, then that's true gratitude. When we can see people for who they are and appreciate them, that's true love. And the more we can expand this concept of love and gratitude, the more connected we'll feel with everyone and everything, including ourselves. So I hope this was insightful. I'd love to hear your feedback on this session as to, did you understand it? And did it resonate with you? Did it connect with you? And what would you like me to explain in a more, I guess I need to find ways to better explain these concepts because they're quite deep, right? And I need to be able to share them so that you can relate to them. And if you can relate to them, you'll understand these concepts. So it challenges me. And the only way I can get better at sharing this type of information and create a more meaningful book is by getting your feedback as to, are you getting this concept? What would make it more relatable? Probably more examples, right? I might need to share more examples. So, well, it's interesting. I'll share an example as I'm wrapping up here. So I like to spend time in the sun because for me, there's that sense of connection to life. And it really lightens me up. It enlightens me. And so in the morning, we have, well, with my street, the way it is orientated, and my building, the way that's orientated, the sun is just on the street. It's not really on my house and anywhere in my house. So I need to step out on the street to enjoy the sun. And obviously, I'm exposing myself from being on the street to everything and everyone. I have my breakfast out on the street and I seek interaction whilst I'm having my breakfast. And yes, there's a part of me that enjoys sort of having sometimes moments to myself to think, and I love deep thinking. And so it challenges me being out there and exposing myself and not going, like I'm quite comfortable going within, right? And I'm quite comfortable sitting within, but I can do too much of that. And I lose this connection with what's beyond me and outside of me. And so the street really takes me out of my comfort zone. And I I make an effort to connect with others that are walking past. And some days, the connection's great, and I'm getting feedback that they enjoy the connection. And other days, um, it could be me, it could be my energy, it could be the other person's energy. I'm not quite sure, but some days I feel that there's sometimes people are not ready to lean in, whether that be me, they're picking up on that energy, so they give me the space and they tend to take a wide arc around me, or it's they're not feeling it, and so we don't dance, we don't really interact, but that's fine. That's like we we go through phases, and there's days where I don't really feel like exposing myself on the street. I'm always clothed. It's just more, um, I guess, eating breakfast out on the street, it feels a bit weird, right? But I love it from so many perspectives. And I think one of them is that I'm probably at times a bit more introverted. This takes me out of my shell. I get to know my neighbors better. I I I get a sense that some people really like the connection some days, because they're feeling a bit disconnected. So me just smiling and saying hi to them is it probably just lightens them up that little bit more. And other days they're not feeling it. They don't want it. They want to stay within their shell because that's feeling better for them. They're connecting with self, and they're not really wanting the interaction with me. That's fine as well. It's important part of the journey is that you spend time connecting to self, but at the same time, um, there's periods that we want to connect outwards because we're seeking what's my purpose and meaning in life, and that requires also stepping outwards, as well as inwards. And so we've got to know when to go within, and when to step out. And it's a bit of a dance, and it's a bit of a tango, and everyone's doing it at different stages. So we we just want to really, I guess, ultimately have forms of connection, and connection comes in, you connecting with your food, you connecting with self, you connecting with others, you connecting with the environment, with nature, you connecting with things that you feel disconnected with, or things that you dislike, and leaning into it to better understand it. So I'm challenged in all sorts of areas. I'm challenged when I hear a chainsaw chopping down a tree because I have a strong connection with nature and I feel for that tree being chopped down. And so it's quite, you know, hurting. And so I've instead of running away from that chainsaw noise, I've sat with it and and thought, well, at the same time as that tree is being brought down, at the same time there's people planting trees, or there's people watering trees, there's people nurturing trees. And so at the same time, there's this destruction of a tree, but there's also support and rebuild of nature happening at the same time. That day when I heard, trees or tree being trimmed or chopped, I went for a walk and I saw that a new garden had just formed in the street. And I was thinking, wow, like if I was just thinking that, we're just destroying nature, but at the same time, we're rebuilding it as well. And it's always there if I look for the wholeness. But if I focus on just the chainsaw noise, that's probably all I'll ever hear. Today I'm hearing peace. There's no chainsaw noise, right? But there'll be chainsaw noise somewhere. It could be in your area. Getting the peace, you're getting the chainsaw noise today. But it's whole as it is. And so, yes, I'm challenged with the way I see the world, and I'm broadening my lens by leaning in, sitting with it, and looking beyond how I've seen it previously. How else can I see this? Build and destroy. Yes, there's trees being trimmed, but what happens after a tree's been trimmed? It then grows back bushier, right? So that chainsaw noise can be actually helping nature. It doesn't necessarily mean total destruction. It can actually be helping nature regenerate, just like we need to prune back sometimes and shed, and let go of things in order to grow. So again, there's lots of concepts I'm now entangling and intermixing with what I started with, but ultimately this episode's been on connection. I'm seeking your feedback. I'm wanting as to whether you're relating to this content, or how could I better help you relate to it. So please share that with me. If you're on a journey of discovering self and a bit stuck, needing help, please reach out to me. I really love helping, guiding, coaching, mentoring people on their journey. I do that on a regular basis and get a lot of fulfillment from it. So, one other thing I wanted to share that just come to memory is, like, every time I get a client, I've discovered that I'm learning something as well, right? As opposed to, I just need to be the teacher, I need to know everything. I've opened myself up to realizing there's just as much I can learn from the person sitting across from me. And like I look at often my health today, and my health has been enhanced by me seeing clients, right? By them introducing concepts that I haven't heard of, that I've explored and broadened my filter, my lens of the world through my clients. And I see health from a more broadened lens because of my clients. So my clients have opened me up to supporting clients in a way that's supportive of them, through being more open, as opposed to thinking, I don't agree with that and I don't support that. I've lent into that uncomfortableness around taking drugs, for example. This is funny, right? I also had a conversation at the end of that presentation, was with someone that had a strong connection with cigarettes. And I could have easily, because of my strong value around health, started to judge that person and really thought, okay, they're unhealthy, that's disgusting. And I would have really shut down my ability to see the wholeness in what we were discussing, right? So she shared with me that part of her thing around smoking was connection. And I'm thinking, wow, I could see that, because I kept asking her questions about this connection of hers with smoking. So smoking for her is like, an equivalent is my mum connects with other people through her dog. So she was connecting with other people through cigarettes, and cigarettes were the medium of connection. And that was the association, the strong association with smoking was connection with others. Like, part of my mum interacts with the world and gets a closer connection with the world around her through her dog. And many people interact over their pets and form relationships. It's just like parents with their children. Parents start to form new connections through their children's connections. And so, yeah, this conversation I had with someone else after the presentation was enlightening, around seeing cigarettes in a different perspective, as opposed to just judging them and seeing them as unhealthy. In her case, it probably brought or opened more avenues of health and wellness through through smoking. So that was the conjugate that opened up more doors to health through social connection, through deep social connection. And it also, the other thing I realized was, through smoking, given in today's world, that smokers have to do it outside in certain areas. So they're connecting deeper because we're pushing them to connect, like we're pushing them into corners. And so they get cornered into, and they get cornered into interacting, and they unite over this sense of smoking, and how we are so rude or disconnection or dismissive of these people that just like to smoke. And we're quite judgmental, aren't we, in that process? So she spends more time outside as a result of smoking, and does more socialization because of smoking, and has formed a deeper connection, and that really helps her health. And it might go well beyond the cigarettes that she smokes. And so she's actually doing health optimization through this conjugate of smoking. I could have easily judged that and disconnected with her. But I didn't. I leaned into that conversation to better understand why she smokes. It's the same with my clients. I lean in this, lean into. I had recently had a client that wanted to take a weight loss drug, and for me, I I can see that the benefit of weight loss drugs is that they give the person momentum and hope that yes, they can lose weight. And this client had a lifelong journey of the inability or her perception of can't lose weight. And I was helping her do that naturally. And then she said, I think I want to give the drug a go. And I could have easily been dismissive and said, no, I don't agree with that. It's wrong. But I opened my eyes to seeing it from her perspective and was able to continue to work with her whilst she was taking the drug and get a more greater outcome for her so that when she went off the drug, she wouldn't gain the weight back because she had changed her lifestyle as well. And so we got a greater outcome. I could have easily lost the client by not wanting to go ahead with the way she was thinking around taking the drug. We danced together and she had momentum and she had other ways or less dependency on the drug going forward. Another client was taking or wanted to take testosterone replacement therapy. And again, it's a drug. And I know that when you take a exogenous source or an outside source, then the body produces less of it. You know, the body gets lazy and produces less of what it doesn't need to produce as much because it's already in the body, right? So we lose that muscle to producing our own natural source. And so that was my concern. But we went on dance together, and I've since helped another client with testosterone replacement therapy who's loving the dance. And I could have easily lost them through the judgment of my previous client, but I was actually able to help my next client through having that open lens with the previous client and introduce testosterone replacement therapy to this other client who we're going on a dance with. And so it's opened up more doors for me to help people by looking to how can I broaden my lens and stop judging and disconnecting with the world. Lean into it. Lean into this uncomfortable feeling or lean into areas of judgment so you can broaden your perspective of seeing the world and find more points of connection, more points of feeling more meaningful and more purposeful life because you're able to relate to more people, relate to more things. You're more relatable because of your broadened way of seeing the world, that broadened perspective, no longer that narrow filter. So I hope you enjoyed this episode on connection. It was a bit long-winded, but I had a flow and I just wanted to share stories and better relate to you so that you better understand what I'm sharing here. It's quite deep content. Please give me your feedback and please reach out if you are stuck and needing help to break through and see a broader perspective of life so you can connect with more people, connect with a broader range of people, and connect with everything. Ultimately, I can help you start that journey or stop you from getting unstuck and help you unravel what's causing this stuckness. So if you want more connection, please reach out. I can certainly help, and please give me feedback on this episode. Thanks for tuning in to another insightful episode of Joyful Mate.